You can go ahead and ring that bell. Come one, come all. Israel Adesanya once vowed to offer all qualified challengers a title shot, and he's held to his word. Saturday, the last style bender will make his 5th title defense. This one against Jared Cannonier, the challenger, offering better than 3-1 value if you like it. And well beyond the main event, this card goes deep. Co-main mayhem promise when Alexander Voklanovski and Max Holloway meet at the center of T-Mobile Arena. And what better way to lead off the main card than with the Sugar Show? And for more on all the action leading up to UFC 276, we welcome in the hosts of the award-winning Morning Kombat podcast, Luke Thomas and Brian Campbell, running bookends on the baddest man in the room, the Hall of Famer, Sugar Rashad Evans. Fellas, let's start where they're going to finish. The incumbent champ, Israel Adesanya, not soft-spoken leading into this one, putting his undefeated middleweight record on the line against an aging but surging Jared Cannonier, who's 5-1 since dropping down to middleweight in 2018. You know, having shared the air with these fellas the last few days, Luke, what's the emerging thought you'll have when they lock the octagon behind the two?
It was interesting today at the weigh-ins, the champion, Israel Adesanya, was 183.5. Boy, that is really trim and lean. He said he wanted to up the ante, so to speak, on this fight camp relative to the last one. He believes he did it. He looked tremendous on the scales. But then so did Jared Cannonier, a former heavyweight turned light heavyweight turned middleweight, and he's had power across all 3 weight classes. Listen, both of these guys are veterans of the fight game. Now, Izzy has done it at a much higher level to this point, but he seems as ready and as dialed in as I've ever seen him. And Jared Cannonier, well, he was somewhat a fish out of water at yesterday's press conference. He looks to me like he had the camp of his life as well, and he knows at age 37, if you don't convert here, you probably won't get back here.
Yeah, it's a big one for Jared Cannonier. I mean, he's going against Israel, and that's a huge mountain to climb and a huge task to overcome. But you know what? You know, he has what it takes, but he has to believe in himself, and that's the big thing with Jared Cannonier. Does he believe in himself? Has he been following too much of Izzy's career? Is he too much of a fan of Izzy? I mean, I understand that they just now stopped following each other on social media, so are they too friendly? You know, I mean, when you got to go in there and fight somebody, you have to be savage. You have to remember that this is a fight, and you have to be almost disrespectful to an extent, because you got to do a lot of disrespecting in that cage. And if you're going in that cage giving Izzy too much respect, it's going to be a problem. But Izzy definitely looks dialed in.
Well, speaking of disrespect, there's been a lot of that coming out of Izzy's mouth this week when talking about Cannonier, saying, look, I'm going to finish him, I'm going to kill him, maybe a few F words thrown in just for a little bit of flavor. Some of us get down like that. But here's what I'm most focused on when these two touch gloves in the octagon Saturday night. Is it more likely that Adesanya can surgically pick apart Cannonier and finish him? The odds makers will tell you yes. But to me, Cannonier is not the kind of fodder that some Adesanya opponents become because of that long reach, because of his striking ability. You may have the ambition to go out there and take him out, but he brings the kind of danger you just don't often see in this game at this level, at his age, in his circumstance and situation, being a 300-pound airport baggage worker in Alaska just less than a decade ago, and look where he is today. No matter which direction this fight goes, I think it's going to actually be a fight, which I'm not sure everybody else agrees heading into this one.
It's going to be a good one, and we hope for that. Unfortunately, Brian Campbell also unfollowed me on social media before this hit. Said he just wanted to spice it up a little bit. What can you do? You know,
I mean, the shirtless ab pics, Joe. Okay, you already have good hair. I mean, what are we doing here, bro?
Come on, that's called staying in show shape, BC. But let's keep this show rolling. Who doesn't love a good trilogy bout in the co-main? We'll get Alex Voklanovski set to take on Max Holloway for the featherweight strap. Not the normal 1-1 split we're used to heading into this type of situation. Volk did win the first 2 fights, but not a whole lot has separated these two through 50 minutes in the octagon. Luke, you spoke in depth with Max Holloway this week. What's his mindset heading into this matchup?
Fire. There is a fire in his belly like I haven't seen in quite some time. And that's kind of weird to say because Max Holloway always has fire in his belly. Against Calvin Kattar, after the 2 Volkanovski losses, he put on a record-setting performance. And following that, he had a blood and guts affair with Yair Rodriguez. But he knows, when I asked him, besides the belt being on the line, besides some revenge maybe, what's on the line? And I could barely finish the sentence before he said the words legacy. And he kept driving it home, and he kept driving it home. His team is criminally underrated. And Max thought heading into the Kattar fight, he was being called a journeyman. He called that to me outrageous. He is desperate not to just get the title back, not just to win, but to prove everyone wrong, including Voklanovski, including City Kickboxing, and everyone who's ever doubted him. He believes that he's the better guy who's done more in this division. He just didn't quite turn that corner when he needed to, and that this opportunity, third time's the charm. He has, again, him and Izzy, a certain intensity. I've been covering these guys for a long time. Don't think I've seen either of them like this on a fight week like I have this time.
Yeah, mindset is the key for Max Holloway. I mean, the last fight that he had with Volkanovski, it just got away with him. He couldn't see how he lost. But you know what? That's the breaks, and he went back and he got himself back together. He went in and went on a run, and he's got himself back to loving fighting. And sometimes you destroy everybody in the weight class and you're running through them, that it doesn't bring the same kind of anticipation in the fights. So like that, you fight flat. But Max Holloway is refocused and he's dialed in and he's taking it personal. And in a title fight, you gotta take it personal. But he's got a very tough Voklanovski in there who's willing to meet this challenge. And this guy right here, Voklanovski, he's a short guy, but he finds a way to find himself in close range to get the fight to where he wants to. So this fight is gonna be an amazing fight, but I think Max is gonna get this all the way.
Well, look, if anybody can recreate themselves for the big moment, it's Max Holloway. How many times have we not counted them out, right? He's a 30-year-old future Hall of Fame legend, but questioned where he was. He came back in the second Volkanovski fight with a better game plan, dropped the champion twice in the opening 2 rounds, came back in the Calvin Kattar fight, and maybe put on the best performance we've ever seen. There's been times due to injuries or what have you, we've said, I don't know about Max. He's proven us wrong before. Can he do it a third time? I think the key in this case, he can't play chess with the chess master like he did the first 10 rounds of this for the most part. Nobody makes mid-fight adjustments like Volkanovski. Maybe nobody with a combination of footwork and smarts has that exact package. Max says we won't need the judges. He says it's going to end before the start of the 4th round. I'm not sure that's possible given how great they are in terms of recuperative abilities. But for Max, you got to bring intention. You got to bring action. Got to make it a war. That, you know, it hasn't worked the first 2 times trying to do what he did. Let's just fight. Let's just fight, Joe.
I am all sorts of giddy. Did I just get called out by Brian Campbell here? I think that's what just happened. I do want to follow up here, guys, because the situation is interesting with how close these first 2 bouts have been. Holloway is one of the bigger draws in the sport, but if you're talking about 0-3 against Volk, that sort of sends you to the back of the line, does it not, Rashad? Is this Max's last gasp as far as the featherweight title picture is concerned?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Brian said it best when he said that he's fighting for legacy. So I think that when you're fighting for legacy, it kind of brings out a different feeling inside you and a different feeling of urgency. And I think that urgency will serve Max really well because he's got to be very disruptive in this fight. He can't allow himself to sit back on his hunches to allow Volkanovski to start landing a series of leg kicks and then a series of punches on top of that. He's got to find himself to get in there right away and be the disruptor, be the guy who's landing first and landing last to score some points in the judge's mind.
I mean, there's no doubt when you think about it, you lose 2, you shouldn't even get a 3rd fight. The reality is the second fight was close enough, and a lot of people really believe that Max was, if not robbed, the judges just didn't quite get it right. Also, part of that is because Max is, relative to Volkanovski, significantly more popular with the fan base. And you would say, well, he's only 30 years old. Like, if he loses here, why couldn't he get back? Yo, but he started 10 years ago in the UFC, 10 years of UFC fighting. I'm by no means saying he's shop-worn, but if Volkanovski beats him 3 times with all those miles, the math just doesn't really add up for another surge up there that folks are going to have a big appetite for. This is very, very much do or die, which for a 30-year-old, you don't say very often.
You know, and I've called this a potentially historic trilogy all fight week, because don't forget this, guys. The winner may end up being the greatest featherweight of all time. It may end up that way. It may be right now, depending on your opinion. Both fighters don't want to play that talk. Max has too much respect for Jose Aldo, the legend, 7 title defenses in the UFC. Alex just says, that's up to you guys to talk about, not me. But if you're Alexander Volkanovski, you now have 3 wins over Max Holloway if he wins on Saturday, and you shut out Aldo himself. Or how about Holloway on the flip side? He stopped Jose Aldo twice. If he can finally get that monkey off his back of those losses to Volkanovski, I'm fine with anyone out there believing the winner of Saturday's fight is the best 145-pound champion we've ever seen.
Legacy in a big way, as you guys outlined that one. As we make our way down the card, another middleweight bout, Sean Strickland taking on the former kickboxing star Alex Pereira. Interesting storyline here as Pereira holds 2 wins over the current champion Israel Adesanya back in their kickboxing days. BC, assuming Adesanya wins at the top, can we chalk this up as a title semifinal, almost winner gets the title shot?
It kind of just became that, and some of it is because of Alex Pereira. he's got a short season here. He came to this sport from kickboxing, as you mentioned, very decorated. It's now or never to find out how great he can be. UFC President Dana White already said the winner of this, if it's Pereira, he'll get that shot at Adesanya. And storyline-wise, it makes sense. But who has taken the most advantage of this opportunity in this position? It's Sean Strickland to elevate himself. Whether you think it's outright cringe what comes out of his mouth, and sometimes, guys, outright cringe is exactly what comes out of his mouth. The fans are starting to love it. He's got kind of a Chael Sonnen vibe. With the trash talk we saw at the press conference on Thursday, where both of those fighters were going after Adesanya more than they were each other, yes, it kind of makes sense. The winner of Saturday's fight is going to get the winner of the main event afterwards.
Couple of interesting wrinkles here to think about, though. Pereira does have the knockout win, but if you watch the fight before that, Izzy was dealing on him. I'm not going to say that the knockout was some kind of fluke, but it was hardly some competitive run or uncompetitive run over. Here's another thing to think about. I was kind of leaning towards Sean Strickland in this contest because he doesn't have the flashy game that Pereira does, but he hasn't lost in 4 years. It is not an accident. He is a careful, calculated striker, some of the best takedown defense in the game. But at today's weigh-in, he looked like he was in trouble. Now, he made it, but go back and look at the footage. He had to nearly gingerly walk to the scale and was visibly complaining the entire time. He looked bad. What kind of role is that going to play? It's hard to say. But if you were leaning towards Strickland, you might want to hedge that bet a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, this fight's going to be amazing. I mean, both these guys, it definitely fits in the contender to be a semis for the title fight. I mean, Pereira is very composed, and he has a confidence. You can tell that he has the victory over Izzy the way that he does 2 times in a row. And just the confidence he exudes, but the inexperience is what I focus on more than anything when he's going against a guy like Sean Strickland, who is not terrible with stand-up, really good all around, and just a pure MMA guy. If Sean Strickland can win the fight in the gaps with the grappling exchanges, the transitions, then he should run away with this fight. But you cannot forget the fact that Pereira is nasty on his feet with devastating knockout power, so it doesn't take much for him to land to really change where this fight goes.
So many outstanding disciplines on this card, and a number of guys possess multiple. Perception, not always reality, and while Sugar Sean O'Malley is perceived to be one of the bigger names in the sport right now, still ranked 13 in the bantamweight contender list. Dana White and the matchmakers really ramping him up into stardom here, and Saturday's going to be his biggest test to date, guys. He gets the card going and gets number 9 in the rankings in Pedro Munoz to open up that main card. Luke, what are you looking to learn about O'Malley and his maturation process in this, his biggest step up in contention yet?
What a fight. This is a tremendous, tremendous opening bout to the pay-per-view main card. If you know anything about these two, you know exactly why they put it where they put it. If you're asking about what Sean O'Malley can do here, he has faced one elite fighter before in Chito Vera, and it's somewhat controversial, at least in the mind of Sean O'Malley. He got leg kicked and it deadened his nerve and he couldn't really move, and the fight was basically called from there. And there were some questions after that point about what kind of durability he actually has. Pedro Munoz is, I think, at this point, the highest-ranked fighter he's ever faced. And while he does get hit a lot, he has tremendous power for this weight class, both with his kicking and his punching, and he's willing to take a shot to give another one, plus his submissions, including his guillotine. Watch out for that, is some of the best in the division. So if Sean O'Malley beats him, he's the real deal Holyfield, a prospect turned to contender overnight. Conversely, Pedro Munoz would love nothing more than to stick it to the golden boy that all the fans like, that he's getting all the attention, showing up in cotton candy colored Rolls Royces. Oh, he wants some of that energy. So it's in either direction a huge stakes fight.
Absolutely. I mean, Sean O'Malley didn't show his best winning and losing spirit when it came to the fact when he fought Chito Vera. He still hasn't admitted the fact that he lost, and I think that can be kind of a problem when it comes down to it, because at the end of the day, you only go as far as you can admit. When you're honest with yourself, I'm like, look, I had a bad day out, and you're honest with ways you can get better, then you make ways to get better. And I don't know if Sean O'Malley has made those ways. Is he a front runner? Pedro Munoz is a good fighter to test that with, and a lot is going to be said about where Sean O'Malley really is based off of what happens in this fight.
I'll tell you how much it'll say about where he is. If O'Malley wins, let's consider this. Munoz, yes, he's lost 4 or 5, which normally would be damning, yet he's still ranked for a reason. All 4 of those defeats are against current or former champions. If Sean O'Malley can defeat him and especially stop him, we are now talking about Sean O'Malley in the title picture moving forward. His stardom already has their knocking on the door. Now he would be stepping up his matchmaking. Don't worry about the age or recent history of Munoz. He gives great fighters a lot of problems because he's stingy, he is tough. This has the potential for big-time action and an early ending if you saw the face-off between them at Thursday's press conference.
What a card we have on our hands Saturday night. Our guys breaking it all down left to right. That's tap, snap, and nap. Luke Thomas, Rashad Evans, and Brian Campbell breaking it down in anticipation of UFC at 276. Thank you, guys. And for more breakdown of UFC 276 and all things swing, join the conversation right now on the #1 pod in fight sports. It's the Morning Kombat Podcast. Fighter interviews, award-winning analysis each and every week. Download and subscribe right now.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.